The miscalculation. The grand meeting chamber of the seraphic hegemony gleamed with polished obsidian and quantum crystalline structures that stretched toward a ceiling that seemed to contain galaxies within its span. For 12,000 years, the hegemony had ruled over 80% of the known galaxy, a coalition of the 7 most ancient spacefaring species, united under the principle that evolution demanded hierarchy. They were the shepherds. All others were either flock or predators to be eliminated. Grand Arbiter Zelkareth's 6 eyes blinked in sequence as the display before the Council of Hierarchs showed the small blue-green world spinning slowly in the outer rim of an unremarkable spiral galaxy. His scaled skin rippled with iridescent patterns, signaling mild curiosity and dismissive contempt, a biological display that all present could read clearly. "This is the origin world of the species designated human," he stated, voice resonating with the harmonics that denoted absolute authority. "Our observers have monitored them for nearly 200 orbital cycles of their world. They have achieved basic spaceflight but remain confined to their planetary system. They war among themselves constantly. They pollute their atmosphere and oceans. They are divided by primitive tribal structures they call nations." Supreme Tactician Vos Nerith stepped forward, her crystalline carapace glinting under the chamber's ambient light. Despite their primitive nature, they have demonstrated concerning rates of technological advancement. In merely 3 centuries, they progressed from combustion engines to rudimentary artificial intelligence and fusion power. "Concerning, but not alarming," countered Hierarch Malcor, the eldest member of the council. "Many species exhibit brief periods of accelerated development before either destroying themselves or reaching a plateau. There is something else," Vos Nerith continued, her voice carrying the resonance of urgent warning. "Our deep-cover observers report unusual patterns in their scientific communities. Research that begins with promise suddenly disappears from their public records. Military installations detected by our orbital scans vanish when follow-up scans are conducted. And most concerning, they have detected our observation probes on 17 separate occasions, yet their governments maintain a policy of secrecy rather than informing their general population." Silence fell across the chamber. Detection of hegemony observation technology was supposed to be impossible for pre-FTL civilizations. Grand Arbiter Zelkareth's skin rippled with patterns of irritation. "You suggest they are more advanced than they appear." "I suggest they are aware of us and preparing, Arbiter." The Arbiter dismissed the concern with a flick of his primary appendage. "Even if true, it changes nothing. The hegemony has incorporated thousands of worlds, many with species far more advanced than these humans. The protocol remains clear. They will be given the opportunity to join as a protectorate species, or they will be neutralized. Their development path indicates they would eventually become a threat if left unchecked." The Council voted unanimously. Humanity would be approached with the standard ultimatum: submission or extinction. It was the same choice the hegemony had presented to every spacefaring race for 12 millennia. None had successfully chosen a third option. Admiral Elena Chen stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic display showing the approaching hegemony fleet. 58 years old, with steel-gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, she had commanded Earth's hidden fleet for 15 years. Now, everything they had prepared for was finally happening. They'd crossed the Kuiper Belt threshold, she stated calmly. Approximately 2,000 vessels, matching known hegemony configurations from our intelligence sources. Time to Earth orbit: 43 hours. General Mwandi of the African Union leaned forward. "And they still haven't detected our defenses." "Confirmed," replied Admiral Chen. "Our quantum camouflage systems are functioning at optimal capacity. As far as they can detect, Earth has a handful of primitive orbital platforms and a few lunar outposts. Nothing more." Secretary General Hirano nodded slowly. "What about the message they transmitted? Have our linguists finished analyzing it?" Dr. Kwan, head of Sena Communications, stepped forward. "Yes, Madam Secretary. As expected, it's the standard hegemony ultimatum. They offer us the privilege of becoming a protectorate species, which essentially means surrendering all resources, accepting population controls, and serving as labor for their empire. If we refuse, they promise complete extinction. They've given us 24 hours to respond, added Admiral Chen. Standard procedure for them. The chamber fell silent as the weight of the moment settled upon them. Humanity had known about the seraphic hegemony for almost 70 years, ever since their first probe was discovered and captured intact. In that time, Earth had maintained the careful illusion of being less advanced than they truly were, while secretly preparing for this inevitable day. "Are we ready, Admiral?" asked Secretary General Hirano finally. Admiral Chen's expression remained impassive, but her eyes burned with quiet intensity. "The Lazarus Protocol is fully operational. The fleet is deployed and cloaked. All defensive systems are active. Phase shift technology is functioning at 100% capacity on all installations and vessels. And Project Prometheus, ready for deployment on my command." Hirano closed her eyes briefly. "Very well. Send them our response." Grand Arbiter Zelkareth was puzzled by the human silence. 18 hours had passed since the ultimatum was delivered, and the primitive world had offered no response. No pleas for mercy, no desperate attempts at negotiation, no defiant but futile declarations of resistance. Nothing. "Perhaps their governing systems are too fractured to form a coherent response," suggested Hierarch Malkor. "Many primitive societies struggle with unity when faced with external threats." Tactician Vos Nerith's crystalline appendages clicked in a pattern expressing doubt. "Or perhaps they are preparing something." "What could they possibly prepare that would concern us?" scoffed Malkor. "Their most advanced weapons are nuclear fission devices and chemical propellant missiles. They have no planetary shields, no orbital defense grid, no warships worthy of the name." As if summoned by his dismissal, a signal alert chimed. A human transmission was incoming. The message was simple, just 5 words appearing on every communication system throughout the hegemony fleet. "You wanted war. Prepare, HFY July." Vos Nerith's carapace flickered with patterns of alarm. "Arbiter, I recommend we—" "Enough," interrupted Zelkareth. "This primitive posturing changes nothing. Begin the standard subjugation sequence. Target their military installations first, then infrastructure and population centers. The usual pattern." The hegemony fleet, arrayed in perfect formation, began its approach to Earth. Weapon systems powered up, calculating optimal firing solutions for maximum psychological impact. The first wave would destroy military bases, but deliberately avoid mass casualties, a demonstration of power designed to break resistance quickly. As the fleet entered high orbit, something unexpected happened. Their sensors detected a sudden energy surge from the planet below, radiating outward in a spherical pattern. "Some kind of primitive electromagnetic pulse," wondered a junior officer. Tactician Vos Nerith felt an unfamiliar sensation along her crystalline spine, something the hegemony had engineered out of their species generations ago. Fear. "All vessels, maximum shields." Evasive patterns. She commanded, overriding standard protocol. But it was too late. The energy wave passed through their shields as if they weren't there, washing over every ship in the fleet. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the screaming began. On the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, navigation officers watched in horror as their systems showed thousands of human vessels suddenly appearing all around them. Vessels that had been there all along but somehow invisible to their sensors. "Impossible," breathed Zelkareth as the tactical display updated. "They can't have this technology." But they did. The human fleet was immense, at least equal to the hegemony force in numbers, but the design of their ships was unlike anything the hegemony had encountered. No visible engine ports, no conventional weapon arrays, just sleek, dark vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Arbiter," began Vos Nerith, but she never finished her sentence. The first human attack came not from their ships, but from the planet itself. Suddenly, on 37 hegemony vessels simultaneously, critical systems simply shut down. Life support, propulsion, weapons, all went dark in an instant. Moments later, those same ships reported human soldiers somehow appearing inside secure areas, bypassing all security measures. "They've broken our quantum encryption." Malcor's voice was shrill with disbelief. "That's theoretically impossible." On the main display, one of the human ships approached. It was smaller than the hegemony flagship, but moved with unsettling precision. A communication request followed, audio only. A calm, measured human voice filled the command chamber. "This is Admiral Elena Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. For 70 years, we have studied you. For 70 years, we have prepared for this day. You believed us primitive because we allowed you to see only what we wanted you to see. You threatened us with extinction if we did not submit. Now witness the consequences of your arrogance." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Zelkareth made the first wise decision since encountering humanity. "All vessels, retreat." But as the hegemony fleet attempted to activate their faster-than-light drives, they discovered another terrible truth. Whatever energy the humans had projected had somehow altered the quantum signatures of their drive systems. They were stranded in Earth orbit, surrounded by a human fleet that had already demonstrated technological superiority they had believed impossible. The miscalculation was complete. The hunt was about to begin. The reckoning. The hegemony flagship Eternal Dominion shuddered as another nearby vessel erupted into a silent blossom of fire and debris. Grand Arbiter Zelkareth watched through the command viewport as his mighty armada, undefeated for 8,000 years, disintegrated around him. It had been less than 30 minutes since the human counterattack began. "How?" he demanded, his skin flashing patterns of rage and confusion. "How is this possible?" Tactician Vosnerith's crystalline form had lost its luster, dulled by the electromagnetic anomalies the humans were somehow generating. "They've weaponized quantum entanglement," she said, her voice hollow. "Our systems show their weapons aren't even projectiles or energy beams. They're somehow altering the probability states of targeted areas, causing matter to simply deconstruct." Behind them, the tactical display showed another wave of human vessels emerging from behind Earth's moon. These were different, larger, with strange geometrical protrusions that defied conventional spacecraft design principles. "Arbiter," a communications officer interrupted, voice quavering. "We're receiving reports from more than 300 of our vessels. Humans are appearing inside secure compartments, engineering, bridge, weapons control, without triggering any security protocols. That's physically impossible," Hierarch Malcor insisted, though his voice had lost its typical authority. "Matter transfer technology of that precision would require." "They don't need matter transfer," Vosnerith whispered, her analytical mind finally grasping the terrible truth. "They've mastered dimensional phasing. They're not teleporting. They're shifting partially out of our dimensional plane and then re-emerging wherever they choose. A technology the hegemony had theorized but deemed impossible to stabilize. Yet somehow, these primitive humans had not only developed it but weaponized it." The bridge doors slid open. Every hegemony officer turned, weapons raised. A single human figure stood in the doorway, a woman in a dark uniform with minimal insignia, her silver hair pulled back from a weathered face that showed neither triumph nor rage, just calm determination. Grand Arbiter Zelkareth. Admiral Elena Chen said evenly, "I suggest you order your remaining vessels to stand down. Immediately." In the council chambers of the Galactic Concord, the assembly of independent worlds that existed beyond hegemony control, news of the battle spread like wildfire. Species that had lived in fear of eventual hegemony expansion gathered in stunned silence around holographic displays, showing the devastation of the invading fleet. Ambassador Trelvosh of the Nevari Collective, a race that had barely escaped hegemony subjugation centuries earlier, turned to his aid in disbelief. These humans, they've destroyed nearly half the hegemony main fleet in less than an hour. Not destroyed, Ambassador, his aide corrected. According to these readings, they've disabled most vessels rather than destroying them outright. They appear to be taking prisoners. Across the chamber, representatives from 27 species watched as the balance of galactic power shifted before their eyes. A species none of them had even heard of before today was systematically dismantling the military force that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. "We must establish contact immediately," declared Ambassador Torlak of the Meridian Alliance. "Any species with this level of military capability could be an existential threat to all of us, or our salvation," countered Trelvosh quietly. For the first time in 12,000 years, the hegemony has met its match. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Chen stood calmly before the hegemony leadership. 2 human soldiers flanked her, though they carried no visible weapons. They didn't need them. "Your fleet is neutralized," she stated matter-of-factly. "Of your 2,014 vessels, 1,012 remain intact but disabled. The rest have been rendered inoperable, but with minimal loss of life. Approximately 89% of your personnel are still alive, though many are injured." Grand Arbiter Zelkarith's skin had gone pale, the iridescent patterns barely visible. What do you want?" "First, I want you to understand what has happened here today," Chen replied. "You believed us primitive because we showed you only what we wanted you to see. While your observation drones watched our public infrastructure, we built a hidden civilization. While you monitored our political squabbles, we unified under a single purpose: survival." She gestured, and a holographic display appeared between them, showing images that stunned the hegemony leaders. Vast underground cities, orbital facilities hidden within asteroids, manufacturing centers beneath Earth's oceans. 70 years ago, we captured one of your scout probes intact. We reverse-engineered its technology, learned about the hegemony, and made a collective decision. We would prepare in secret, allowing you to believe we were an easy conquest while building the capacity to defend ourselves. Vosnerith's analytical mind was already calculating implications. The quantum camouflage, the dimensional phasing technology, the probability weapons. How could you develop all this in merely 70 years when it took us millennia? Admiral Chen's expression remained neutral. Perhaps because necessity is the mother of invention, or perhaps because you've grown complacent in your dominance. Your civilization stopped truly innovating thousands of years ago. You simply refined existing technologies while consuming more resources and subjugating more worlds. She stepped closer to the hegemony leaders. "Now, here are humanity's terms. The seraphic hegemony will immediately withdraw from all occupied worlds where the indigenous population has expressed desire for self-governance. You will provide reparations in the form of technology and resources to those worlds. You will recognize Earth and its colonies as sovereign territory, never to be threatened again. And you will dismantle your forced labor systems and planetary strip mining operations." Zelkarath's eyes widened in shock. "You would dictate terms to the hegemony. We still control thousands of worlds. This battle is but one defeat. This battle," Chen interrupted, "is a demonstration. Right now, human vessels are positioned near 37 of your core worlds, completely undetected by your defensive systems. Each carries weapons capable of reducing planetary surfaces to molten slag. We don't wish to use them, but make no mistake. If you force our hand, we will." She activated another holographic display, showing real-time footage of human warships in position around key hegemony worlds, ships that had somehow traveled across thousands of light years without detection. "How is this possible?" whispered Malkor. "The energy requirements alone. We call it the Einstein-Rosen Bridge Network," Chen explained. "Stable wormhole technology. We can deploy our forces anywhere in the galaxy within minutes." The implications were staggering. The hegemony's military doctrine was based on having superior numbers at any given conflict point, But if humans could instantly transport their fleet anywhere, we'll need time to consider these demands, Zel-Kareth said finally, attempting to regain some semblance of control. Admiral Chen nodded. You have 24 hours, the same time frame you gave us to consider surrender. Her expression hardened slightly. Choose wisely. We have no desire for galactic conquest, but we will not hesitate to defend ourselves and others from your predation. With that, she and her soldiers simply vanished, not exiting through a door, but phasing out of existence on the spot. On Earth, in the underground command center beneath the Mariana Trench, Secretary General Hirano watched the events unfold on the strategic display. Around her, representatives from all of humanity's nations observed in stunned silence as Admiral Chen delivered humanity's terms to the hegemony. Will they accept? Asked General Monty. Dr. Quan, who had spent decades studying hegemony psychology and social structures, nodded slowly. They will. Their entire civilization is built on a hierarchy of power. We've just proven we're at the top of that hierarchy. Their cultural programming will compel them to submit, at least temporarily. And then, pressed Hirano. Then we must be vigilant, replied Admiral Chen's voice as she phased into existence in the chamber, having returned directly from the hegemony flagship. They'll adapt, reconsider, perhaps attempt to develop countermeasures to our technology. But we've bought ourselves time, decades, perhaps centuries. Hirano nodded thoughtfully. And the rest of the galaxy. There are other spacefaring civilizations out there, according to the hegemony records, already reaching out, confirmed Dr. Quan, gesturing to another display showing incoming transmission requests from dozens of non-hegemony worlds. News travels fast, even across interstellar distances. They want to know more about the species that brought the hegemony to its knees. What do we tell them? Asked a representative from the European Union. Admiral Chen removed her uniform cap, revealing the exhaustion in her eyes that she had carefully hidden from the hegemony leaders. We tell them the truth, that we're a species that values freedom, our own and others, that we have no interest in conquest, but will defend ourselves and assist others facing subjugation, that we believe in cooperation over domination. She paused, a rare smile crossing her features. And we tell them that humanity is ready to join the galactic community, but on our terms, not as anyone's subjects. 3 days later, Grand Arbiter Zel-Kareth stood before the Hegemony High Council on their throne world of Turxus Prime. His skin was pale, his once proud posture diminished. The treaty has been signed, he announced to the assembled hierarchs. The humans have already begun moving their forces to oversee our withdrawal from 17 disputed worlds. They've provided their dimensional phasing technology to indigenous resistance movements on 12 others. This is unprecedented, hissed one of the ancient hierarchs. In 12,000 years, no species has ever. The situation has changed, Zel-Kareth interrupted, a breach of protocol that shocked the assembly. We must adapt, or we will perish. The humans could have destroyed us utterly, but they chose restraint. Perhaps there is something to learn from this. Across the chamber, tactician Vos Nerith studied the holographic model of a human dimensional phase drive they had been permitted to examine as part of the treaty. Alongside her, hegemony scientists were already identifying principles they had never considered. They innovate differently, she mused. They take conceptual leaps where we proceed incrementally. They embrace theoretical extremes where we seek conservative stability. Another hierarch scoffed. You sound almost admiring of these upstarts. Vos Nerith's crystalline form shimmered as she contemplated the data before her. I am. They accomplished in decades what took us millennia. And they did it not for conquest, but purely in self-defense. She turned to face the council. Perhaps domination is not the optimal evolutionary strategy after all. Aboard the human flagship Defiance, Admiral Chen stood at the observation deck, watching as Earth grew smaller in the distance. Their mission to oversee the hegemony withdrawal from the First World, a beautiful ocean planet called Thalasia, would take 3 weeks at their current speed. Dr. Kwan joined her at the viewport. The Meridian Alliance has formally requested diplomatic relations. They're the largest non-hegemony power in the galaxy. 17 species working in cooperation rather than subjugation. Chen nodded. And the Nevari, offering us access to their quantum computing technology in exchange for our dimensional phasing systems. Their ambassador mentioned something about balance of power and preventing another hegemony from rising. Smart, Chen acknowledged. We'll consider it. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars. Humanity had prepared for the worst, expecting to fight a desperate battle for survival. Instead, they found themselves thrust onto the galactic stage as a major power, respected, feared, and increasingly sought after as an ally. Did we do the right thing? Chen asked quietly, revealing all our capabilities at once. We could have kept some in reserve. Dr. Kwan considered the question. The shock and awe approach worked. It prevented a prolonged conflict that would have cost millions of lives. And it established our position clearly. We're not to be trifled with, but we're not conquerors either. Chen's gaze remained fixed on the receding Earth. For 70 years, we prepared for war while hoping for peace. Now we have to navigate something more complex than either. The human condition. Dr. Kwan replied with a small smile. Always adapting, always evolving. As the Defiance activated its Einstein-Rosen drive, and the fabric of space-time folded around them, Admiral Chen allowed herself a moment of pride. Humanity had faced extinction, and not only survived, but emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to take its place among the stars. Not as conquerors, not as subjects, but as equals ready to forge a new path forward. The message Earth had sent to the hegemony remained emblazoned on the bridge wall of every human vessel, a reminder of where they had been and what they had overcome. You wanted war. We chose peace through strength.